for the very first time in my life, everything I've ever wanted to know is at the end of that checkered flag. So at our G8 party, and then it became the Holden party, there was one guy that showed up with a GTO. GTOs are made in Australia. They're Holden Monaros. He had a beautiful car, but the whole time he was always kind of like, hey, I know you, or kind of staring at me or whatever else. And I'd never met him before, but I knew he was an auto detailer because everybody at the dang show used him. And he's just a great guy. His name's Sean. And just, hey, how you doing? How will I go? And it was always kind of the deja vu, like, hey, I've seen you before, or do I know you, or do we, anything. Insert weird acquaintances here. But we all had mutual friends. We just didn't know each other. And Sean is the best in the business, and I'm terrible at keeping my cars clean. So we became friends from that day forward, and he would always just come out and detail all the cars at my house because we have a big shop. But we were just friends, and we'd always laugh, and we're about the same age, and had a lot of stuff in common, a lot of friends in common. And so I use Sean all the time, but for him, there was always like a missing link, like he couldn't quite put his finger on how he knew me. Or, I mean, he could say, hey, you know, I was friends with Tyler, and that's how we knew each other. Or I was friends with Arnie, or that's how we knew each other. Or I was friends, whatever. But he knew that there was something deeper. He just could never, ever put his finger on it. For me, I just was like, bro, I don't have any, I mean, you're my car detailer guy, and we laugh about the same goofy stuff. I couldn't put my finger on it. I had no idea either. But for me, it was just, we were just friends. Days go by, and life is good. It's just normal, and I'm still DJing at the club. And Sean and I become friends on Facebook. And that's about it. That's about the end of that. But my wife always wanted to find out who my biological family was because I'm adopted, and it bothered her. My mom and dad are Ron and Sue Bell. They're 79 and 81 years old, and they live over on Shelby Street in Indianapolis. No big deal. But I'm 6'4". I was redheaded back in the day. My dad's 5'9". My mom's 5 foot. My sister's 5 foot. All brunette, all brown hair. And I always looked like the milkman's kid anyhow. My wife always wanted to find out who my biological family was because she's married to this guy, and she wants me to stay around for a while, and she wants to make sure I got solid medical history, whether I do or don't. And the people that live over on Shelby Street are not my parents. So she had me spit in a cup. I did the old Ancestry.com thing just to see what would come up. And the whole time I worked at the casino and DJ'd, I drove an SRT8 Magnum back and forth, and I put ridiculous amounts of miles on that car. Now, I had an RT Magnum before I had the SRT8 Magnum, and there is that clause where you never meet your heroes because, damn it, I love the RT Magnum, and I hated the SRT8. Seats were uncomfortable, ride was terrible, but I graduated and I learned a hard lesson. 5 weeks go by, wife gets the old email that Travis's DNA test has come back. And she calls me. I'm driving the SRT8 to work, got a 100-mile drive down to the casino, and she says, hey, your DNA test come back. And I'm like, cool. She goes, well, if I find something out, do you want me to tell you? Because it's Friday, heading into work. You know, what if I find out, you know, I'm heir to the throne of who the heck knows, whatever. So I'm going to lay it on me, whatever. So she calls right back, and she goes, okay, I'm going to send you a picture. This is your dad. And she sends me a picture because my wife knows that I'm telling a story about her right now. Like, my wife owns the internet, like she is it. So his name is Dennis Sloan. He owned a wild bird and parrot business in Indianapolis. He always used to show up on the local morning news stations, whatever else. He's passed away. I said, perfect. Well, now we know who my dad is. Now I know why I'm so tall. Now I know why whatever thing. She sends me another picture back, and she says, this is your brother. And I'm like going, wow, all right. So this drive to work of the SRT8 is getting a little bit more interesting. And then she says, okay, this is your mom, but she's off the internet. Like, she's, no, not a Facebooker, not a, she's, no. I'm like, cool. So from one simple drive to work in a car that I didn't enjoy very much, I found out a whole bunch of stuff. Go to work Friday, Saturday, wake up Sunday morning. I had found out that over those 2 days of my wife doing an investigation, that my brother had passed away in a car accident when he was 25. And I would have killed to have a brother. I was adopted, I had a sister, but I would have killed to have a brother. So I'm like going, all right, well, where do all these people live? Because Dennis Sloan has passed away, my brother had passed away, but when you get people's obituaries, they unlock everything. They will tell you who they're survived by, everything, whether they're dead or alive. Ancestry is pretty evil, but it's pretty awesome. It will tell you everything you've ever wanted to know. So that morning, I woke up and said, well, where's my mom live? Where's this lady that gave birth to me live? And Haley said, it's up in Lebanon, Indiana. And we had an address. And so we punched it in and took off driving in her Pontiac G8 GT. Like all these cars we're driving around in. We got RT Magnums, SRT8 Magnums. Now we're in a Pontiac G8. So every time you've ever wanted to put something in the GPS, you have the little checkered flag. And for the very first time in my life, everything I've ever wanted to know is at the end of that checkered flag. And GPS may not mean anything other than how to find my way from Indianapolis to Ed's house, or how to find my way to Arnie's place, or how to find the way to wherever Doug lives, or, you know, insert whatever here. But everything I've ever wanted to know my whole life is at the end of that checkered flag. So I drive all the way up there, and she says, you know, turn right, and 1,500 feet on the left is the address. And so I'm like going, man, you know, and you're like going, what should we do here? What should we do with her? So before I tell you that story, I also found out that my parents, Judy and Dennis, had me in 1973. And Judy was a little young and had a father that may not have been the best role model. So they got married quickly to make their own decision to give me up for adoption, which was probably the smartest thing they could have ever done, because Judy didn't want me to be raised by her father since she was a minor. But they stayed married together till 81. They had my brother in 80. My parents, Ron and Sue Bell, adoptive parents, named me Travis Bell. My parents, Judy and Dennis, named their son Travis also, and had no idea that my name was Travis, but yet still named him Travis. That Travis passed away in a car accident. I knew I couldn't walk up to this lady's house or these people's houses and say, hey, my name's Travis, because I knew the other Travis had passed away. So we're driving down the road, and in 1,500 feet, everything I've ever wanted to know on this little GPS that's in every car is going to tell me my whole life story. So I whip it in the driveway, and there's two people mulching. You know, you're putting all the stuff by the sidewalk, and a lady about 15 feet away, and a guy right next to the driveway. And I pull up, get out of the car, Haley gets out of the car, and I say, hey, I'm chasing down my family history, and it may lead to this house right here. And of course, we drove Haley's orange car, and the first thing out of the guy's name is like, hey, somebody's here in a fancy car. It's the first words out of his mouth. And I said, could I ask you a question? And he's like, lay it on me. I said, does the date February 20th of 1973 mean anything to anyone here? And he put his little spade shovel down, and the lady 15 feet away raised her hand, and she said, it means something to me. And I said, did you give a child up for adoption on that day? She said, I sure did. And I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I couldn't tell her what my name is, because I knew that she had lost a son named Travis. So we got together, and it all eventually came out. And now I know who my biological parents are, and we call her Mom Judy, and she's awesome. And she calls, and she's Mom Judy. And she calls me Travis Bell, and she calls the other Travis Sloan or Travis Wayne. When you walk to her house, I look so much like my brother that you look on her mantle and you're like, damn, I don't remember doing that, and I don't remember doing that. But when you make the mantle, you're somebody at her house. So somehow, all of this is going to end up in my car detailer, Sean Cawthon. My brother Travis had a daughter, which is my niece, and his baby's mama posted that all of this has come out. She put it all over the internet that, oh my gosh, Travis had a brother, blah, blah, blah. Riley has an uncle, blah, blah, blah. Well, Sean calls me crying, my car detailer. He's like, Travis, I know why I know you now. And I'm like, why? He said, because I was best friends with your brother. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Travis Sloan and I grew up next door to each other and rode bikes and got along, and we jumped and went to mini truck shows, and he said you would have really liked him. So as bizarre and as small the world is, that my car detailer that I see twice a week or whenever I see him, he was my biological brother's best friend, lived right next door to my biological parents, and that's why I freaked him out at our first G8 car show, because I look exactly like my brother.